Okay, in this third video, I will continue looking at, I may not know what's right, but I know what's wrong idea, or at least might look at some studies that people have actually done. Not myself. I don't claim to be an expert for sure, but I do claim to be a student. I don't claim to be an expert on anything, but I claim to be a student about everything, at least that crosses my path. So far I've been looking at the problems that people have, or that people who promote the idea that this thing is spinning like this and then rotating at 666,000 miles per hour around the Earth, tilted 23.4 or inclined 66.6 degrees. I don't know if those numbers mean anything to you, but they do something to me. Now here's some men that have done some scientific studies. Okay, there is not a single experiment that I know of that proves the Earth moves. Not one. In 1887, there was an experiment by two men, Gleason and Morley. And a lot of these things that you can research further online, which I encourage you to do. But Gleason and Morley in 1887 they hoped to prove the spinning of the Earth by measuring the speed of travel of light rays. I don't fully understand how they did it, but the experiment proved the Earth was stationary. Now that provided a big problem in the so-called science community. In 1729, James Bradley, an experiment, proved the ether is not carried along by the Earth. The ether or atmosphere. So what the scientists claim is that when the Earth is spinning, the atmosphere is going with us, so we don't feel the wind of the 1,000 mile an hour spin here, possibly 600 mile an hour wind up here. And so they're saying that the ether supposedly, or the atmosphere, is traveling along or carried along by the Earth. But in 1729, James Bradley's experiment proved that incorrect. The Sagnac experiment in 1913 proved there is ether, okay, or atmosphere. And in 1925, Gleason and Gale proved the ether passed over the Earth every 24 hours. So instead of the Earth spinning and the ether connected to it, which it's not, the Earth is staying stationary and the ether passes around the Earth. And I'm not dealing with the shape of the Earth yet. In 1871, Airy's failure proved the stars moved carried by the ether while the Earth was stationary. Okay, and then because of those problems, Mr. Einstein developed the deceptive theory of relativity was to use to try to explain away the Gleason-Morley experiment that proved the Earth was not moving. And what he did is he removed the idea of the ether just because he didn't want to believe in it. When a man had already proved there was an ether, that the Earth wasn't attached to the ether, and that the ether rotated around the Earth every 24 hours. Nikola Tesla stated, "Today's scientists have substituted mathematics for experiments, and they wander off through equation after equation and eventually build a structure which has no relation to reality." And that's what Mr. Einstein did. As I stated earlier, there is not a single experiment that I know of that proves the Earth moves, either spins or rotates around the Earth. The Coriolis effect supposedly is a result of the Earth spinning and is responsible for the deflection of an object moving above the Earth. Rightward for the northern hemisphere and leftward for the southern hemisphere. The problem with that is there's not one flying machine above the Earth that has to account for it. Okay, there's no sniper that has to account for it. And they claim the atmosphere moves with the spin of the Earth, but planes are not affected by it. Okay, so if the Earth is spinning and this becomes a helicopter, and a helicopter comes straight up, and the Earth is spinning at 1,000 miles an hour, when the helicopter comes down, he might end up in France. Oh, but no, he's moving with the ether, when the scientists show that he's not. The ether appears to be the medium for the light waves that travel under a dome. Now, the scientists claim that there's an Antarctic here at the bottom. Okay, at the bottom is Antarctica. In 1773 and 1776, Captain Cook became the first modern explorer to reach the Antarctic Circle. And reach the ice barrier. Okay, so this guy supposedly came down and reached the ice barrier, and then he supposedly traveled around this island down here, which should have taken about 14,000 or 15,000 statute miles to travel around it. Okay, so he said that he and his crew sailed 60,000 miles along the coastline and never found an inlet or path through. He said the ice wall was a considerable height. In 1839 through 1843, James Clark Ross and his crew sailed 2 heavily armored warships looking for an entry point along the southern ice wall, trying to find a way in. He said the wall extended 150 to 200 feet above sea level. He didn't say sea curvature. He said it was perfectly flat and level at the top and without any fissures on its even seaward face. In 1872 to 1876, the British ship Challenger completed the circuit around Antarctica. Okay, supposedly he traveled all the way around Antarctica. But the circumference here, but he's supposed to be traveling 14,400 statute miles, according to the Globetards. But the Challenger spent 3 years in travel and traversed nearly 69,000 miles. So they must have went around it several times. Ha ha. The exploration of Antarctica by Admiral Byrd in the 1950s was called Operation Deep Freeze. Admiral Byrd claimed that there is more unexplored land on Antarctica than the United States. He said now the interior of the Antarctica is militarily off limits to anyone. There are no flight routes over Antarctica. All visitations to the area are controlled and monitored by governing agencies. But what does Antarctica appear to be? It doesn't appear to be a continent. From all these testimonies, it appears to be the outer edge of the earth. And now I will go to the Bible, a very scientific portion of the Bible, and see what the Bible says. Job 26 verse 10. He hath compassed the waters with bounds, or boundaries, until the day and night come to an end. Compassed the waters. Compass. Around. Compass the waters. So if we take the Bible and we take some of this evidence, this is obviously wrong. This can't be right from the evidence of these men. So what is the answer? Well, I would say the answer would be something like this here, where you see the earth is flat like this, but yet you have pillars under the earth, and I'll give more into that, where the ice wall is around the earth. And this is why the men traveled 69,000 miles around the earth rather than around the bottom portion of the world. Now this develops a map. And I'll try to get this map. Hopefully you can see it. This is an 1892 map. Hopefully you can see this. It's called Gleason's map. And it says it's scientifically and politically correct as is. This is called an azimuthal equidistant projection, which can be traced back to 1000 AD. The oldest globe that you're going to find is about 1492. This is the official map for the United States Geologic Survey. It is useful for showing airline distances from center point of projection. North Pole is in the center, and south is a direction outside from the center to the ice wall of Antarctica all the way around. The North Star is fixed above the North Pole since Genesis 1 verse 16. And as I mentioned earlier, and you can find these online, and I would encourage you to study it. As I mentioned earlier, Satan often will hide his ideas in plain sight. And if you look at the United Nations logo, it is a flat earth map, and then they divide it up in 33 sections because the Freemasons are closely connected to it. Now I'm going to shift and go to the Bible. Now this idea reveals the events of the earth, especially Jerusalem, is the center of the thoughts of God, and life has meaning and purpose. What is our conclusion when the earth is the center, focal point, where the sun goes around the earth? You know, where the earth has like this, and it's got foundations, and it's got dungeons, and then the earth, or the sun and the moon, the two lights, the greater light and the lesser light, go around in this fashion over the earth. This shows that the earth is, especially Jerusalem, is the center of the thoughts of God, and life has meaning. Now at this point, this is the point I would like the best, going to the Bible. And some flat earthers that don't like the Bible, I would encourage you to pay attention to the Bible. I encourage you to do a little research on the Bible, King James Bible, as you do the research in other areas. Now, I'm not an expert, but I am a student of the evidence that's available to me. I do not believe that I'm more spiritual or intelligent than another for what I believe. Why? Because Psalm 147 verse 5 says that the understanding of God is infinite. And it says in Isaiah 55 that his thoughts are higher than my thoughts, high as the heavens are over the earth. God has a limitless knowledge. Okay, and if I know a little bit of it, and if another fellow knows a little bit of it, and maybe some of our knowledge is the same, and maybe it isn't. It doesn't make one more intelligent than another or more spiritual than another. It just means that God was kind to show us some things. Everyone has truth and error within their beliefs, And preconceived ideas are difficult to overcome. Especially the preconceived idea from all of us have been taught this from day one in school, having seen this globe in class all the time. It's hard to overcome a preconceived idea. Everyone knows something that I do not know, hence all men can be my teacher. And I will not brand somebody an idiot or uninformed simply because they ignored a topic or they didn't have the opportunity to study the topic. I do not respect a dishonest skeptic who refuses to consider the evidence. And I do not respect a blatant liar. Now, believers of the evidence, especially this idea of the shape of the earth and the geocentricity, are often people who pick and choose parts of the Bible to try to believe what they want. But I would encourage you to not limit your studies and research to the idea of a flat earth or a stationary earth. I would encourage you to take that step further and research about the Lord Jesus Christ. Well, I don't agree with some things in the Bible. You know, maybe the writer of the Bible has a little bit more insight and knowledge than you do, and maybe that writer of the Bible has the evidence that you weren't given. And that's possibly the reason why he reacted the way he did. I would dare say he's got much more intelligence than you and I. So if we go to the Bible and read the verses, and we can take this preconceived idea we have and put it on a shelf, we might discover that the Bible reveals a compass-like shape or a face of a clock-like shape of the earth. Like Auguste Piccard said, it seemed a flat disc with an upturned edge, the Antarctic around the edge. Now, the Bible portrays, if you believe the words, when I say the Bible, I'm referring to the English of the King James Bible. The earth is portrayed to be a stationary plane with an outer edge of ice. There are pillars which support the earth with nether parts within the pillars like a dungeon. The earth has a firmament or dome over it that cannot be penetrated. And the sun and moon travel in circuit over the face of the earth as like a person is laying on their back and their face is looking up towards heaven. But you and I must overcome the preconceived idea of a spherical earth spinning and spiraling through space, yet having a windless day. As I mentioned several years ago, I was encouraged to research this idea, but I just didn't really care to research it at the time. And so I've been looking at it lately, and the one passage that caused me consternation was in Joshua chapter 10. Okay, in Joshua 10, there's a battle, historical account. And in verse 12, Joshua 10 verse 12, then spake Joshua to the Lord in the day when the Lord delivered up the Amorites before the children of Israel, and he said in the sight of Israel, Sun, stand thou still upon Gibeon, and thou moon in a valley of Ajalon. And the sun stood still, and the moon stayed until the people had avenged themselves, and so forth. Okay, now, if we're going to go back to this one, Joshua said, sun, stand still. He didn't say, earth, stop moving. Now, if he said, sun, stand still, and the earth was moving, and he's speaking figuratively, as the earth is traveling 1,000 miles an hour, and the sun is right here, and the sun is starting, let me get over to Israel here, and the sun is starting to set Let's see, am I traveling this the right direction according to them? Who knows? They don't know which, I suppose. Okay, so I guess it's going this way. So the sun stopped setting. He says, sun, stand still. So if the sun didn't stop, the earth stopped as it's traveling 1,000 miles an hour. Have you ever been in a vehicle when you slammed on the brakes at 70 miles an hour? It would kill everybody on this earth. To stop the earth spinning at 1,000 miles an hour, it would kill everybody except for the ones up here who would just not be so dizzy. And then in Isaiah 38 verse 8, it says here in Joshua that the sun stood still for about a whole day. So not total whole day, but about whole day. In Isaiah 38, you have the completion of the whole day. In Isaiah 38 verse 8, this is the story of Hezekiah where he asked God to make the sun go backwards. And so in verse 8, behold, I will bring upon the shadow of the degrees which has gone down in the sundial of Ahaz 10 degrees backwards, so the earth returned 10 degrees by which degrees it was gone down. So again, he didn't say the earth stopped spinning. He didn't make the earth go backwards. That would have, killed everybody. That sudden stopped. To stop the spinning earth would have killed everybody on the earth except for the ones up north. Okay? And so the idea is these passages, if you believe what they say, it said, sun, stop, stand still. That verifies the idea of a geocentricity idea where the earth is stationary. Okay, other passages. Now, let's look at the shape of the earth. Now, the one verse that I had difficulty with is Isaiah 40, verse 22. And maybe you had the same difficulty I have, or had. Isaiah 40, verse 2, it says, it is he that sitteth upon the circle of the earth. Okay, so with my preconceived idea, I thought circle of the earth, I thought that. Circle of the earth. But what if the circle of the earth is that? A compass. And then he reads a little bit further. If I would just kept reading, I would have kind of figured it out. Where it says, it is he that sitteth upon the circle of the earth, and the inhabitants thereof are as grasshoppers, that stretcheth out the heavens as a curtain, and spreadeth them out as a tent to dwell in. Okay, so a tent. Flat ground. A tent is above the ground. So you have a dome above the ground as a tent. You see, if I would take the shape of a basketball, that would be a ball. And the Bible does use the word ball. Isaiah 22 verse 18. He will surely turn and toss thee like a ball into a large country. So a shape of a frisbee or a disc is a circle. The shape of a compass is a circle. Okay, and let's find some more passages. 1 Kings, and this is where we just go through certain passages of the Bible. And I hope that you are a person that's interested in what the Bible says. Okay, but 1 Kings chapter 7, verse 33, the writer says, and the work of the wheels were like the work of a chariot wheel. Their axle trees, their naves, their felloes, and their spokes were all molten. So we're seeing a circle. A circle. And in verse 35, he calls it a round compass. Now that's about, a compass would be the roundness of what's called the laver of brass that was in the tabernacle. Okay, now probably one that would help us out is in Proverbs 8. If the Bible was given vocal cords, Proverbs 8 and 9 is what it would verbally speak to you. And it's very scientific. Proverbs 8, there are some very scientific places in the Bible. Job 38, 39, 40, 41 is one place, and Proverbs 8 is one. Proverbs 8:22, the Lord possessed me in the beginning of his way before his works of old. Okay, the me in the context is wisdom in verse 1. I was set up from everlasting, from the beginning. Okay, Genesis 1:1. Or ever the earth was. When there were no depths, I was brought forth, when there was no fountain abounding with water. Before the mountains were settled, before the hills was I brought forth. While as yet he had not made the earth, nor the fields, nor the highest part of the dust of the world. When he prepared the heavens, I was there. When he set a compass upon the face of the deep, or the depth. When he established the clouds above, when he strengthened the fountains of the deep, when he gave to the sea his decree, the waters should not pass his commandment. So the waters are held in by the ice wall. We're not going to pass his commandment. When he appointed the foundations of the earth. You got a foundation under here. So there's his description. Hebrews chapter 9 verse 23 is describing the Jewish temple. And the Jewish temple is a description of the creation of the earth. Hebrews 9:23, it was therefore necessary that the pattern of things in the heavens should be purified with these, but the heavenly things themselves worth better sacrifices than these. For Christ has not entered into the holy places made with hands, which are the figures of the true, but into heaven itself, now to appear in the presence of God for us. So the Old Testament tent pictures the earth. In Job 38, it's called the breath of the earth. Okay, the breath of the earth, where the earth is laid out. Job 38 verse 18. Okay, how do you have the breath of the earth on something like this? Job 38 verse 18. Hast thou perceived the breadth of the earth? Declare it if thou knowest it. So it's laid out in a circular fashion. Revelation chapter 20 verse 9. It says, and they went up on the breadth of the earth and compassed the camp of the saints about. Okay, so that one is about a bunch of people at the end of the tribulation who will come and go around the city of Jerusalem, but they came from the breadth of the earth. How do you get that from this? You don't. The breadth of the earth. And then it's portrayed as a seal of clay in Job 38, where you have a little clay ball and push the ring onto it, flatten it, and the earth is portrayed as the seal of the clay in Job 38, verse 12. Hast thou commanded the morning since the days, and caused the dayspring to know his place, that it might take hold of the ends of the earth, that the wicked might be shaken out of it? It is turned as clay to the seal, and they stand as a garment. Okay, I'm going to have to stop there and start the next one.